The dawn breaks and then the morning sends the sun high in the sky. Who would hide from heaven's glory? Who would pass the challenge by? La 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 la.
There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. There's a morning for every nation when the sun's high in the sky. There's a time for every people to affirm their destiny. La 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 la. Even so, all of us together can create a better land. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand. La 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 la. Leave the past, a new tomorrow waits for all who understand.
Those who have traveled from around the world to be here for this week, please come on up. Yeah, and who else is out there who's traveled? Come. We are celebrating International Day of Yoga with an international convocation of leaders, the next generation of leaders for Ananda from around the world. We'd like to invite anybody who has not traveled but still feels themselves to be a part of this group to come forward, please. Matthew, and Danny, and Larry, and come on, Denise, come on up, and who else? All I will say is when you come up, you're committing to be a part of carrying this light forward. I will tell you, if every single person stands up and joins the front, it's okay with me. This group of souls has put out extraordinary energy to be here and celebrate with us this week. They carry the light of these masters and Swamiji, Jyotish and Devi, and the movement that is Ananda into the world all over the planet. And we want to just thank you all. This is only, by the way, this is only about a third of them that are coming this week. So there's another 30 or 40 or 45. No?
There's quite a crew rolling in.
Yeah.
Come and join us this weekend and you'll see the masses.
And just as a reminder, next Sunday, because we couldn't possibly hold all these people here, we will have all of our services next Sunday out at Ananda Center of Laurelwood. But let's take a moment and stand and send them our gratitude for the effort that they made to be here. Send them our love for the light they carry wherever they're serving, and offer all of our friendship as that light passes through us.
Our reading is taken from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This is week number 24. How Devotees Rise. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we asked the question, why do devotees fall? And we considered the downfall of Judas in this context. Jesus, in answer to Judas's criticism for allowing Mary to rub his feet with spikenard, a very costly ointment, said, "The poor always ye have with you, but me ye have not always." Jesus is saying here that there is one supreme injustice that needs eradication. Poverty, yes, but not of a material kind. Poverty in a spiritual sense. Divine blessings are not common in this world. They are extraordinary. When they come, we should give them priority above every other consideration. Never allow a moment of inner joy, for instance, to be set aside for lesser duties. Divine attunement is our highest priority. As Lahiri Mahashai, the guru of Yogananda's guru, said, to listen to the heart's inner sound, Om, which issues from the very center of our being, is man's highest duty. Mary, on this occasion, was not communing in inner silence with Christ's Spirit, as she had been when Martha urged that she be reproached by Jesus for not helping out in the kitchen. Mary this time was serving outwardly, but in a very different spirit from the restless fussing for which Jesus had reprimanded her sister Martha. Those who see a radical difference between the paths of action and meditation should understand this distinction. To serve in the right spirit is necessary, for only thereby can we overcome our karmic tendencies toward restless activity. The important thing is that the spirit be always inwardly focused, that in everything we do, we act in loving service to the Lord. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says in the 3rd chapter, the state of freedom from action, that is, of eternal rest in the spirit, cannot be achieved without action. No one, by mere renunciation and outward non-involvement, can attain perfection. Whenever the Spirit of God descends upon you, however, remember the words of Jesus, "Me ye have not always with you." Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Oh.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How is everybody?
Awake and ready.
Fabulous. We have a great privilege to have so many visiting friends and Guru Bhais from around the planet. We have India represented, we have Europe represented, we have all of our colonies represented. It's a great and brief period of time, and we should all draw on it as much as possible. And if we had more time, we'd have each of them give Sunday service to our great benefit. We don't, so we're going to have just a very special gift today. You know, the topics today are how devotees rise, which is what the masters come for. They come to tell us how to get out of ourselves, how to get out of the mental and emotional morass that keeps us perpetually restless and perpetually unhappy. And Swami Kriyananda, by extension, and by his attunement and self-offering to the light of God through Paramahansa Yogananda, became a primary channel for how devotees rise and for the blessings of God's light into this world. And his life was, and I'm speaking to all the next wavers, but I'm speaking to everybody here. His life was one of constant self-offering into something greater than himself, into service to our awakening. And he spent, you know, that beautiful chant, the first one they did, Quanto ti amaro, how shall I love thee, Lord my God, with every breath I breathe. With every single breath. That was Swami Kriyananda's life. He just breathed in and breathed out, how can I serve? How can I hold the light? How can I be present in this moment for the blessings of others? Toward the end of his life, he was getting a little bit frail. The body was getting frail. The spirit was getting more powerful, but he had to carry it around somehow. And about that time, a lovely young woman showed up in his world with a tremendous capacity for attunement and a tremendous willingness for self-offering. And she spent the last few years of his life working on for herself, practicing being completely present in self-offering and in service, and just listening for his breath, listening for what was happening for him, so that he could continue to carry that light into this world and into our lives. And we are all benefited from her service because it made it possible for him to continue to travel. And his last visit here was a part of that extension. Spiritual growth is not easy, and it takes tremendous courage to step into it in a way that is victorious. And she has written a book about her time and about the process that she went through during this effort to start to really live in the presence of a saint, to live in the presence of that much light and to be attendant upon it. And she will speak for us, with us in just a moment. And then her husband spent the last year or so, or maybe two, also again in close proximity in partnership of that service. So they had a chance to practice not only how devotees rise, but also calmness in the midst of incredible movement of energy. And then they actually had the chance to practice the ultimate calmness amidst the crash of breaking worlds, because both of them that were there when Swami Kriyananda passed. And again, these are defining moments for all of us, but also for those who are closest to it. I'd like to introduce them and have them come up and speak individually. I don't know which of you would like to speak first. Doesn't matter? Okay, Narayani will speak first. Would you come on up? And thank you so much for being willing to share, and thank you for all that you bring with you. And we'll hand this off to you. Is there anything else you'd like me to say before I do?
I want to have a sip of water.
Yes, of course.
Yes, of course. And we're setting up the light.
You know, many of us are cave dwellers from many incarnations, and standing up and speaking publicly is an act of will. Thank you for being willing to do this today. Yes. Okay.
First of all, I wanted to say we came here 3 years ago, and we were delighted to see the temple, the school that was not built yet, the new building. We went to the campus, to Lordwood, and we were in awe, like, oh my God, this is so wonderful. There is such huge potential here. And before we left, we told them, we really want to come back because there is such a magnetism here. And just in 3 years, now that we have come back, we have seen so many changes that are already happening, that they have happened. And I'm not talking just about the property. I'm just talking about the people who are living there. And I was deeply touched to see how the work is just building up so beautifully. When Daiva was saying that, yeah, they were living with a saint, and Swamiji was all about raising up and his consciousness, and yes, it was all about that, but it wasn't easy at all to be with Swamiji. I was thinking about the title of today, Swami's life, our own lives, and I was thinking the hallmark of Swami Kriyananda's life is based in two principles, in two concepts. Whenever I think of him, these two streams of thoughts come to me. One is like he was constantly raising his consciousness, his energy, and meeting each single test situation at that level. And the other thought is like he never, ever gave up. So if you ask me how devotees rise, I will say, well, I think it's by raising our own consciousness and by never give up. Because that's the hallmark also of Ananda and every single one of us. That's the distinction. It's like a blueprint that each one of us carry. I'm going to start with a story that many of you perhaps have already read in the book, but if not, I will tell for you because it shows a little bit the kind of consciousness and energy that it was required to be around Swamiji. Even though it was a blessing, but he always expected the best of you. And I remember one morning, I don't know if Miriam will remember, we were in Assisi. It was a very, very busy period of Swami's life. He was working on the movie, he was giving interviews, he was giving satsangs, he was writing emails, I think he was writing another new book. He was really, really busy. In addition of all that, he had insomnia. So he couldn't sleep at night, which meant I couldn't sleep either. And the level of consciousness that I had was very different of the level of consciousness Swami had when he didn't even sleep. So anyway, that period went on and on and on for a few weeks. One morning, the alarm rang, and I just thought, I just can't. I wish I could sleep just for half an hour more. God, I'm not asking that much, just half an hour more. But then, the desire to help Swami has been always so intense that whatever thought was always secondary. So I will just get dressed up and I will walk up to his apartment. But I found myself like a little bit complaining. Now again, I'm so tired. I wish I could sleep a little bit more. So when I went up to his apartment, I started sneezing. Tush. Tush. And the thought came to me, oh my God, I'm starting to sneeze, which means I may get sick. And if I get sick, that means I cannot be around Swami and I need to go to bed. So I was having those thoughts there in my mind, and I come next to Swami and still, I was dramatizing a little bit more. And I think Swamiji really looked at me and saw what was going on. And at that point, he looked at me very, very seriously and very forcefully. He said, "Can't you use your willpower?" And I got paralyzed. First of all, because I realized he was reading my energy and he was listening to my thoughts, and they were not at my highest. So he was answering to that type of energy. Can't you use your willpower? And I answered, yes, Swami, I will. And then more softly, he replied, very good. He said, the power of the mind can overcome anything. But most importantly, he was telling me, don't let your energy, your negative thoughts, to influence your energy. And especially to watch out for the thoughts of, I need, I don't want to, I can't. That was a moment that created an impact in my consciousness. It became imprinted like a tattoo that gets imprinted in your skin. Just yesterday, while I was meditating here, a beautiful story came. This is not in the book, but I thought, since it came here, might as well share it with everyone here. It was towards the end of his life, and he was writing on his last novel that he rewrote, Love Perfected, Life Divine. So at that time, we were in Pune, and Naya Swami Asha was visiting. So those few days, Swami was writing, working on that novel, and he will call Shurjo, Asha, and myself sometimes just to keep reading the pages, just to see if we could find something that needed to be corrected. I have to admit, even though the book, that novel is beautiful, but it has a lot of vocabulary that is written in a very complex way that Swami rewrote it and make it more simple for us to understand. But still, for me, was like a very complicated book to read, even though I love it. It's one of my favorites. So one of those evenings, Swamiji called and said, you know, I have finished the book. Just come over and just read the last 3-4 chapters. So we were there, and Swami was finalizing editing. Asha was reading the pages. She will pass to Shurjo, and Shurjo will pass to me. So I could see Asha's pile of files, pages coming down, Shurjo giving to me, and my file of pages coming up. It's just like they were reading so fast, and I was still like one page. It was like, oh my God. So anyway, we started around 8:39 p.m., and around 11:30, Asha finished, Shurjo finished, and I was still with my pile of papers. So they left, and Swamiji said, you know, I'm going to get ready to go to sleep, but you just stay here and finish. I looked at the clock, it was 11:30, and I said, okay, Swami, I'll try. So he went inside, and I helped him to put him on bed and all that. So I went outside. In his house in Pune, the door that divides his bedroom with his living room has like a little glass window like that, where you can see through his bedroom if the light of the living room is on or off. So I put Swami to bed. I went back to the living room, and I thought, I'm just going to wait for 10 minutes and see if he goes to bed. So then I will just switch off the light, and I will go to my bedroom, and I will just sleep, and I will figure out how to read it tomorrow morning. So when he asks me, I will be ready to give him an answer. So anyway, I read a little bit. I was reading. I look, and it was 12:15. So I thought by now he will be completely, sleeping. So I went just very quietly with the papers. I switch off the light, and I hear, Narayani? I said, oh, no. So I went, yes, Swami. And he said, have you finished already? And I said, no, Swami, I have not finished, but it's 12:30. I think I'm going to my room. I'll try to finish tomorrow morning, and I'll let you know how the end is and how much I like it. And he said, please finish it tonight. He said, I won't go to bed until I receive an email from you telling me that you have finished, and tell me how you like it. I knew he was very serious, and I understood that something else was going on here. So I thought, okay, this is what is in front of me. Let me embrace it fully, and let me just finish with this novel. So I went to the apartment, and I started reading. Finally, the last page, finished. I looked at the clock, it was 2 a.m. I went to my computer, and I wrote Swamiji. I said, Swamiji, I just finished the novel. It's beautiful. I love it. I wrote a few more things. And I said, thank you so much for writing it. And I put the phone on charge, and I went to the bathroom. And when I came back, I hear my phone, bing, 2:15. So who is at 2:15? I went to my phone, and there was an email from Swamiji. And in that email was his reply. And he said, I'm so happy that you read the book, and you read it until the end. It was very important. A saint is a sinner who never gives up. That was it. That was his reply. And I would say, if we ask ourselves, let's not give up in those little things that we are having resistance towards, whether it's a relationship, whether it's to learn new chants, whether it's to be a better father, whether it's a project, whether it's to end to read those pages, whether it's a quality that you want to develop, whether it's a tendency that you want to overcome. It doesn't matter what it is. Just keep going on and don't give up. Just raise your energy and don't give up. Thank you.
For those who are interested, her book is available out in the foyer, and she'll be available to sign them after service for a brief period of time. So thank you so much. That was beautiful. Shurjo?
Good morning, everyone. When I first came to Ananda and I heard Swami Kriyananda say, tell the story, we've all heard this story of him catching that bus to Master. He said, I had only two desires, to know God and to share God. And at that moment I said, wow, I have those two desires too. I must, I must be doing pretty good. Because I assumed, Swami meaning, those are two major desires in my life. It was only until I came to Swami Kriyananda after my marriage to Narayani that I realized those were the only desires he had. He had no other desires. You'd keep looking for him to come up with something, but it just wouldn't come. He just had those two desires, to know God and to share God with everyone. And when we lived with him, everything he did was guided only by those two desires. No matter what it was, any conversation he was having with you, whatever he was thinking, he was constantly thinking about the other people, emails he had to respond to, things that were going on in other communities. No matter what, if he was sitting at the dinner table, if he was resting and having tea before he was going to bed, those were the only two desires that governed his life. When Narayani and I were in seclusion in Spain, we took a year off, primarily for Narayani to be able to write this book, but also just for us to kind of go deeper within and reconnect also with Swamiji after his passing in a way that we had ignored for a little while. And we started our seclusion, both of us taking separate time off just to, go deep, meditate, only think of God. And it was just fabulous, as you can imagine. But after that period was over, we came back together. We had another little period of just quiet time, just blending our energies back as one, because we'd gone separate ways, attuning to Master in our own way, but then coming back and creating that common attunement. And when Narayani finished writing her book, she asked me if I'd like to help her edit the book, and I said, of course, I'd love to. So we'd sit every day and we'd start editing the book. And when we were in that process, while we were trying to attune to Swami, and while we were trying to share Swami through the book, we both got into the flow where for those months, 2 months perhaps, we had only two desires. How can we know Swami, and how can we share Swami? And when we had just those two desires, it was so much more powerful than that seclusion that we had where I was just meditating and I was just using all my willpower to think of God all the time. It was because that second part I realized of wanting to share is really when the power comes and flows through you. Wanting to attune is almost just the step one. But if we don't have the wanting to share part, that attunement has no movement, has no place to flow through. This very age we live in of Dwapara Yoga, this technique that we practice called Kriya, is the technique of action. So simple, so beautiful, no complications, action. our attunement is of action, of service, of sharing. It's not enough to just receive. I had an interesting experience just now during purification. It was the first time I said, why don't I not receive and rather let me, whoever is blessing me, let me try to give to them. And it was, I've never been so purified in my life. It just struck me. I said, since I'm about to talk about giving and sharing, let me see if this works before let me test my theory. Because when you open your heart to give, grace, which is all around us, sneaks in. But if we're opening our heart just to receive grace, I don't know, grace is smarter than that somehow. And so I was surprised that the reading had to do with service. I'm very happy that it tied in. But more and more now, the understanding of how do devotees rise, it's something that I'm, of course, preaching to the choir. I don't mean to at all suggest that that's something we're not always doing continuously. But Narayani and I, for the last year, we've been traveling to practically all our communities, all our centers, and everybody is feeling this interesting moment where they're feeling a certain expansion. They're feeling Swami much more strongly in their lives, in Ananda. And it just feels like the moment where each of us now need to say, I'm going to share this much more dynamically. I'm going to bring this out much more consciously. Because I know if somebody asks you to do something, you'll do it beautifully. We're all devotees. It's natural for us to smile, to give. But now it's time for us, each of us, to say, we can't wait to be asked. If we say, I want to share, Master, he will flow through us beautifully, powerfully, in a way we've not experienced him. Even when I say, Master, tell me what to do. Master, all I want is your will. Just say, I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to give whatever I can. If somebody were to say, oh, if you were to do your kriyas, do them with will. There is no if. We have to do our kriyas. We have to act. Even in our meditation, we're acting. Our technique is one of action. And so today, if there's anything we can leave, we can take from this place now, especially with this reading of How Do Devotees Rise, is I would say let's go out. You have the International Day of Yoga coming. You have the perfect opportunity. We've had the perfect opportunity, the group of us that have come here. Yesterday, we went out to the farmers market and we were chanting and we were singing and we were handing out flyers and we did a strolling kirtan around the whole farmers market, just giving. Not the flyers so much, but just giving. Just feeling Master give. As Daiva said, that's what they have come for. And they need their instruments. And when we become those instruments, wow. Because for those 2 months that Narayani and I were involved with the book were the most blessed months of my life, even more when I was with Swami. Because when I was with Swami, I leaned on his desire, those two desires. I leaned in on his airstream to carry me with him. I really didn't create my own. But now is the time for each of us to create that airstream for us, that stream of power by giving, by offering, by doing more. Because more can be done. Many blessings.
Thank you, Shurjo. It was beautiful. Thank you. You know, Kriya action has to be, the outward action has to be balanced with that inward action in the deep inner spine. Otherwise, we just become restless And if we don't balance our Kriya with outward service, then we just become increasingly passive and withdrawn. So the two things, we have this beautiful match of power and energy through inner Kriya and outer Kriya or outer service. Thank you both for such a beautiful sharing this morning. It was just lovely. I'd like to close this morning with, last week we read one of Yogananda's 4 prayers for different parts of the day. I'd like to read this one we read from the night last week. This is prayer at noon, and it speaks to calmness beautifully. The sun shines high in the heavens. Everything is fully awake. Awaken thou me likewise. Thou art invisible, yet thine energy flows through the rays of sunshine. Fill my veins with thine invisible rays, making me strong and tireless. As the sun shines in the busiest streets, so may I behold thy rays of protecting love in the crowded places of my life's activities. As the light shines steadily, undisturbed on the street, whether crowded or empty, so may I hold my calmness and my strength steadily while I move through the crowded or empty streets of life. Give me strength, and what I receive, teach me to share with others. Om Shanti. Amen.
Here is make us channels of thy peace. Here's an introduction written by the composer, Swami Kriyananda. They roam the countryside, St. Francis and his brothers, bringing peace like medicine to battled hearts, and innocence like refreshing rain to lives that are parched and barren.